I think I didn't do anything wrong, just let the night go a little too far. That's why I was so shocked when a process server handed me divorce papers at my desk over one tiny birthday mistake. If my husband had listened to me instead of overreacting, we could have moved on. But now, everything is ruined. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. By the time dessert arrived, the table had fractured into polite small talk and awkward silences. I laughed too loudly at Kellen's jokes, poured him more wine than anyone else, ignored the way Helen's eyes tracked every gesture. Simon said little, his smile thinning with every passing minute. When the check came, he reached for it automatically. "I've got this," he said, the practiced civility in his tone failing to mask his exhaustion. Kellen leaned back, easy and confident. "Come on, man, at least let me cover the drinks. It's your birthday, let me celebrate you properly." Simon's glance at me was fleeting but sharp. "You've already done plenty." The tension was so thick you could have sliced it. Loren caught my eye and gave a subtle shake of her head, warning me not to push it further. But I couldn't stop. The more Simon withdrew, the more I needed to prove I wasn't the one being unreasonable. "Oh, for God's sake, Simon," I said, my voice carrying just enough edge. "Can you please just accept a nice gesture without turning it into an argument?" "Sure," he said evenly, "if it's really just a gesture." Kellen chuckled, trying to smooth things over. "Man, you sound like you think I'm hitting on your wife or something." Simon didn't laugh. "You think I'm wrong?" The table went quiet again. The waiter appeared with the credit card machine, and Simon paid before anyone could protest. Leela stared at her melting ice cream, silent tears slipping down her cheeks. I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. Afterward, outside the bistro, the air was cool and mercifully quiet. Helen and Martin murmured awkward goodbyes and left for their car. Loren hugged me briefly, her voice low and strained. "You need to be careful, Evie. You're playing with fire." "I'm not doing anything wrong," I said, defensive even as the words rang hollow. "Maybe not yet," she said, "but you will if you keep this up." When she walked away, I was left alone with Simon. The streetlight cast a harsh glow over his face, emphasizing the lines of disappointment etched around his mouth. "I invited everyone because I thought it might make you happy," I said finally. "You invited him," Simon replied, "because he makes you happy." "That's not fair." "No," he said quietly, "but it's true." Kellen emerged then, holding his jacket over one shoulder, flashing that same easy grin. "Hey, you two coming? Thought we might grab one more drink." Simon looked at me, then at Kellen. "You go ahead," he said. "I've had enough for one night." He turned and walked toward the parking lot. Kellen watched him go, then looked back at me with a mischievous tilt of his head. "Rough night, huh?" For a moment I considered following my husband, apologizing, trying to salvage what was left of the evening. But Kellen's hand brushed mine again, and that spark, that intoxicating, dangerous spark, flared to life. "Yeah," I said softly. "Rough night." He smiled and I smiled back. And just like that, I took another step down the road I'd late to swear I hadn't seen coming. Simon noticed. I could see it in his increasingly rigid posture, the way his responses became monosyllabic. But instead of stepping up, instead of showing me the attention I craved, he just sat there like a wounded animal. "The food here is incredible," Kellen said, his hand resting on my thigh under the tablecloth. "We should come back sometime." "We should," I agreed, not moving his hand away. "Why should I? My husband barely touched me anymore. Was I supposed to live like a nun because Simon had forgotten how to be romantic?" Helen's eyes narrowed, clearly sensing something inappropriate. But what could she say? What could anyone say? Kellen was just being friendly, just showing me the kind of attention my own husband should have been giving me. As the waiter brought the check, Kellen leaned closer to examine the bill. His hand slipped higher under my skirt, his fingers warm against my skin. I should have moved away. A faithful wife would have moved away. But I was starving for this kind of contact, this validation that I was still attractive, still worth pursuing. Simon's face went completely blank. Not angry, blank, like he'd just watched something die. The ride home was silent except for Lila's quiet sniffling in the back seat. Simon drove with mechanical precision, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. I stared out the window, replaying the evening, already crafting my defense. I hadn't done anything wrong. Kellen was just touchy-feely. Simon was overreacting, seeing problems where none existed. At home, Simon went through the motions of putting Lila to bed while I cleaned up the kitchen, slamming dishes perhaps harder than necessary. When he emerged from her room, I was ready with my preemptive strike. "I hope you're not going to make this into some big drama," I said without looking up from the sink. "Kellen's your friend. He was just being friendly." Simon stared at me for a long moment. Then, without a word, he grabbed a pillow from the couch and headed for his home office. That night, for the first time in our 8-year marriage, my husband slept on the couch. The next morning, I found Simon making coffee in stony silence, dark circles under his eyes proving he'd slept as poorly as his makeshift bed suggested. Lila sat at the kitchen table, picking at her cereal and glancing nervously between us. "This is ridiculous," I announced, pouring myself coffee with deliberate casualness. "You're really going to punish everyone because you misread a situation." Simon's hand paused on his mug. "Misread?" "Yes, misread. Kellen was just being friendly. You know how he is, touchy-feely with everyone. But you turned it into some big conspiracy in your head. Evanthi, You saw what you wanted to see." I cut him off. "You've been looking for problems in our marriage, and now you're manufacturing them. It's honestly embarrassing." Lila's spoon clinked against her bowl. "Are you getting divorced?" "No, sweetheart," I said quickly, shooting Simon a warning look. "Daddy's just being dramatic about nothing. Everything's fine." But Simon knelt beside Lila's chair, his voice gentle. "Mommy and Daddy are having some grown-up problems right now, but we both love you very much. That won't change." "Some grown-up problems?" I laughed, the sound sharp even to my own ears. "Simon, you're acting like I committed murder. I had dinner with your friend. That's literally all that happened." "That's not all that happened, and you know it. I know that you're being paranoid and jealous. I know that instead of trusting your wife, you're choosing to believe the worst possible interpretation of an innocent evening." Simon stood slowly, studying my face like he was seeing me for the first time. Innocent. Completely innocent. And the fact that you can't see that says more about your state of mind than mine. After Simon left for work and I dropped Lila at school, my phone rang. Helen's name appeared on the screen, and I considered letting it go to voicemail. But ignoring my mother-in-law would only make things worse. "Hello, Helen." "Evanthi." Her voice carried its usual chill. "I wanted to check on Simon. He seemed upset last night." "He's fine, just being oversensitive about nothing." A pause. "Nothing?" "Your son has convinced himself that Kellen was inappropriate, but honestly, Helen, you know how Kellen is. He's affectionate with everyone. Simon's reading things into it that just aren't there." "I see." Another pause. "And you don't think your behavior contributed to Simon's concerns?" Heat flashed through me. "My behavior? I had dinner and conversation with friends and family. Since when is that a crime? Since it makes your husband uncomfortable enough to sleep on the couch. That's Simon's choice. I'm not responsible for his insecurities." Insecurities. Helen's tone could have frozen water. Interesting word choice. After ending that pleasant conversation, I immediately called Lauren. My sister answered on the first ring, her voice warm with sympathy. "How are you holding up?" she asked. "Simon's lost his mind," I said, grateful to finally talk to someone reasonable. "He's convinced I was flirting with Kellen last night, and now he's giving me the silent treatment like a child." "Seriously? God, Ev, I'm sorry. You looked like you were having fun for once. When's the last time Simon made you laugh like that? Exactly. Kellen was just being nice, showing me the kind of attention Simon used to show me. And instead of maybe taking a hint and stepping up his game, Simon decides to play victim. Men, Lauren sighed. They ignore you for months, then get pissy when someone else notices you exist. You didn't do anything wrong. Thank you. At least someone in this family has common sense. Want me to talk to him? No, let him sulk. Maybe he'll realize how ridiculous he's being. But Simon didn't seem to be realizing anything. He came home that evening, quiet and distant, speaking only when necessary. During dinner, he focused entirely on Lila, asking about her day, helping with homework, giving her the attention and engagement I craved for myself. Can we watch a movie tonight? Lila asked hopefully. Of course, Simon said. You pick. All of us? Simon's eyes flicked to me. If Mum wants to. I'll be there, I said, though his tone made it clear I wasn't particularly wanted. We sat through Frozen with careful space between us on the couch, Lila curled against Simon's side. Every few minutes, she'd glance at me with worried eyes, clearly sensing the tension despite our attempts to act normal. After putting Lila to bed, I found Simon in his home office, typing on his laptop with unusual intensity. What are you working on so late? I asked from the doorway. Just some documentation. Documentation of what? He looked up, his expression unreadable. Things I should have been paying attention to. Simon, this is getting ridiculous. You're acting like I cheated on you or something. I had dinner with your friend. That's it. That's literally all that happened. Is it? Yes. And the fact that you can't accept that is really concerning. Maybe you should talk to someone. This level of paranoia isn't healthy. He saved his document and closed the laptop. Maybe you're right. I am right. We had a nice evening out, and you're turning it into some kind of betrayal. It's not fair to me, and it's not fair to Lila. You're right about that too. His calm agreement should have felt like victory, but something in his tone made me uneasy. So, we can move past this? We'll see. The next morning, I found Simon's old notebook left open on the dining table. The pages were filled with dates, times, and detailed notes written in his precise handwriting. My stomach dropped as I recognized the pattern. Every late night I'd claimed to be working, every unexplained charge on our credit card, every time I'd been vague about my whereabouts. But the most recent entry made my blood run cold. Birthday dinner, downtown bistro, Kellen's hand under E's skirt. E did not resist or object, witnesses present including Lila. I slammed the notebook shut, my hands shaking. Simon wasn't sulking or being dramatic. He was building a case. Sunday lunch at Martin and Helen's house had always been a command performance, but this week it felt like walking into enemy territory. Helen's greeting was arctic, Martin's smile seemed forced, and Simon moved through the familiar rituals like a man going through the motions. "How's everyone doing?" Martin asked as we settled around the dining room table, his tone carrying the false cheer of someone desperate to maintain normalcy. "Great," I said brightly, determined not to let Helen's disapproval poison the afternoon. "Work's been busy, but good. Lila's doing wonderfully in school." "That's nice, dear," Helen said, though her attention remained fixed on Simon. "And how are you, son? You look tired." "Just working through some things," Simon replied quietly. Leela, sensitive to the undercurrents, stayed close to her father throughout the meal. When Helen brought out photo albums to show her recent pictures, Lila climbed into Simon's lap instead of exploring the house like she usually did. "She's been clingy lately," I explained to Martin. "Kids pick up on stress, even when there's really nothing to worry about." "Is there stress?" Helen asked pointedly. "Nothing that can't be worked out with a little maturity and communication," I said, shooting a meaningful look at Simon. After lunch, Helen cornered me in the kitchen while the others were in the living room. "Evanthi, I need to ask you something directly." I continued loading the dishwasher, keeping my voice light. "Of course." Are you having an affair? The plate I was holding nearly slipped from my hands. Excuse me? It's a simple question. It's an insulting question. I can't believe you'd even ask me that. I can't believe I have to, but my son is clearly in pain, and after what I witnessed Friday night. What you witnessed was a dinner party. Period. If Simon's in pain, it's because he's choosing to manufacture problems where none exist. Helen's eyes hardened. I've been married for 35 years, dear. I know the difference between innocent friendship and inappropriate behavior. Then you should know that Kellen was just being friendly. He's always been affectionate. That's his personality. Simon knows this. Simon knows a lot of things. He's also not stupid. Heat flashed through me. Are you saying I am? I'm saying that if you're playing games with my son's marriage, you'd better stop. Simon deserves better than to be humiliated in front of his family. The only person humiliating Simon is Simon. I've done nothing wrong, and I resent the implication that I have. Then why is he sleeping on the couch? Because he's being stubborn and unreasonable. Because instead of talking to his wife like an adult, he's decided to punish me for imaginary crimes. Helen studied me for a long moment. I hope for everyone's sake that you're telling the truth. But her tone made it clear she didn't believe me. Later that evening, I called Lorraine to vent about Helen's interrogation. She actually accused you of having an affair. Lorraine's outrage was gratifying. Can you believe it? Over dinner with friends, Simon's got his whole family convinced I'm some kind of adulteress. That's insane. What did you tell her? The truth, that I haven't done anything wrong, and Simon's being paranoid, but she's clearly chosen sides. Of course she has. Mother-in-laws always think their precious sons can do no wrong. Remember how she acted at your wedding? Like Simon was settling. Exactly. She's never liked me, and now she sees this as her chance to prove I'm not good enough for him. Well, screw her. And screw Simon too, honestly. You deserve someone who trusts you, who doesn't turn every innocent interaction into a federal case. Thank you. God, it's such a relief to talk to someone rational. Have you heard from Kellen since Friday? The question caught me off guard. Why would I hear from Kellen? I don't know, just wondering if he knows about Simon's meltdown. I haven't talked to him. Why would I? Simon would probably interpret a simple phone call as evidence of an affair. But even as I said it, I remembered the text that had arrived Saturday night. Last night was fun. We should talk. I deleted it immediately, not wanting to give Simon any ammunition for his paranoid theories. Maybe you should talk to him, though, Lorraine continued. Get your story straight, in case Simon tries to drag him into this drama. There's no story to get straight. We had dinner. That's it. I know that, but Simon's clearly not thinking rationally. It might be smart to make sure Kellen knows what's going on. After hanging up, I stared at my phone, considering. Kellen deserved to know that Simon was acting crazy, didn't he? As Simon's friend, he'd probably want to help smooth things over, and if Simon was going to keep being unreasonable, maybe I needed allies. I crafted a careful message. Hey, Simon's been weird since Friday. Nothing serious, but wanted to give you a heads up in case he says anything strange. Hope you had fun at dinner. Kellen's response came quickly. Sorry to hear that. Want to grab coffee and talk about it. I'd hate for this to affect my friendship with Simon. See? I told myself. He was being a good friend, wanting to help fix things. There was nothing inappropriate about meeting for coffee to discuss the situation. That would be great, I typed back. Tomorrow afternoon. But as I hit send, Simon's voice echoed from his office. He was on the phone with someone, his tone serious and businesslike. Through the partially open door, I caught fragments. Documentation, evidence, protecting my interests. My blood turned cold. Simon wasn't just building a case anymore. He was consulting professionals. Monday morning brought an illusion of normalcy. Simon made coffee, I packed Lila's lunch, and we moved around each other with the careful choreography of estranged spouses pretending everything was fine. But underneath the surface, I could feel something building, a pressure that made the air itself seem dense and threatening. At work, I tried to focus on spreadsheets and filing, but my mind kept drifting to my coffee date with Kellen. Meeting him felt necessary now, not just to coordinate our stories, but to have someone in my corner who understood the situation, someone who could help me figure out how to handle Simon's increasingly erratic behavior. "You seem distracted today," my coworker Dinah observed, appearing at my desk with her usual cup of tea and appetite for gossip. "Just some stuff at home," I said vaguely. "Marriage troubles?" Her eyes lit up with interest. At 38, Dina had been through 2 divorces and considered herself an expert on male psychology. "Simon's being difficult." "They all are, honey. What's he done now?" I found myself spilling the whole story: the birthday dinner, Simon's accusations, his family's hostility. Dinah listened with growing indignation. "So let me get this straight," she said when I finished. "You had dinner with friends, one of them was friendly, and now your husband's acting like you're some kind of criminal?" "Basically, yes. And his mother's interrogating you like you're on trial." "She actually asked if I was having an affair. Can you believe that?" Dina shook her head in disgust. "Men are so insecure. They ignore you for months, then lose their minds when someone else shows you attention. It's pathetic." "That's exactly what my sister said." "Your sister's smart. Look, Ivanthi, you're young and attractive. You deserve to feel appreciated. If Simon can't handle other men noticing that, maybe he should try being a better husband." Her words felt like validation, like permission to stop feeling guilty about something that wasn't even my fault. I just wish he'd listened to reason. "Honey, when men get like this, reason goes out the window. They get all territorial and stupid. The best thing you can do is live your life and let him deal with his own insecurities." That afternoon, I met Kellen at a quiet cafe downtown. He was already seated when I arrived, looking concerned and genuinely worried about the situation. "I feel terrible about Friday night," he said immediately. "I never meant to cause problems between you and Simon." "You didn't cause anything," I assured him. "Simon's just being paranoid. He's convinced himself that normal social interaction was somehow inappropriate." Kellen frowned. "Maybe I was a little too friendly. I've been going through a rough patch since my breakup, and I guess I was enjoying the company more than I should have." "See, you're being more mature about this than my own husband. You were just being yourself, warm and friendly. Simon used to appreciate that about you." "What's he saying exactly?" I hesitated, then decided honesty was the best policy. "He thinks we were flirting. He saw you touch my leg during dinner and interpreted it as something sexual." Kellen's cheeks reddened. "God, I'm sorry. I didn't realize how it looked. It looked like friends being friendly. The fact that Simon can't see that is his problem, not ours." We talked for over an hour, and I found myself relaxing for the first time in days. Kellen listened without judgment, offered perspective on Simon's behavior, and made me feel heard in a way my husband hadn't in months. When he walked me to my car, his hand on my lower back felt natural, comforting. "Thanks for this," I said. "I really needed someone to talk to." "Anytime. And Avanthi, don't let Simon make you feel guilty for having friends. You deserve people in your life who appreciate you." The drive home felt lighter, like I'd finally found some clarity in the chaos. But that feeling evaporated the moment I walked through our front door. Simon was in the kitchen, his laptop open on the counter, phone records spread across the surface like evidence at a crime scene. "How was your afternoon?" he asked without looking up. "Fine. Busy day at work." He made a note on a legal pad. "Dina says you left early for a dentist appointment." My stomach dropped. "You called my office?" "I called to ask if you wanted me to pick up Lila from school. Dina mentioned your appointment." "Think fast." "It was just a quick cleaning. Nothing exciting." "Which dentist?" "What?" "Which dentist did you see? I should update our insurance records." The question hung in the air like a trap. Simon's eyes were still on his paperwork, but I could feel the intensity of his attention. "Dr. Martinez," I said, naming our actual dentist, "why are you interrogating me?" "Just trying to keep our records straight." He finally looked up, his expression unreadable. "Funny thing, though, I called Dr. Martinez's office to schedule my own cleaning, and they said you don't have an appointment on the books." The room seemed to tilt. Maybe they made a mistake. Maybe. Or maybe you weren't at the dentist today. "Simon, what are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm asking directly. Where were you this afternoon?" The calm reasonableness of his tone was more frightening than shouting would have been. This wasn't the emotional, paranoid husband I'd been dismissing. This was someone methodically uncovering lies. "I was running errands," I said carefully. "I may have stopped for coffee." "Where?" "I don't remember exactly. Does it matter?" "It matters because you lied about where you were going. It matters because you've been lying about a lot of things lately." "I haven't been lying about anything." "No." He turned the laptop screen toward me. "Then explain these." The screen showed our cell phone bill with detailed call and text logs. My number was highlighted in yellow, showing dozens of messages to a number I recognized with growing horror. Kellen's number. "Simon, I can explain." "Please do. Because according to this, you've been texting Kellen almost daily for the past 3 weeks, including several messages on Saturday night after our misunderstanding at dinner." My mouth went dry. "We're friends. Friends text each other." "What kind of texts?" "Normal conversation, nothing inappropriate." "Then you won't mind showing me." He knew. Somehow, he knew I deleted the messages. The realization hit me like a physical blow. My husband, quiet, unassuming Simon, had been investigating me with the thoroughness of a detective. "I don't have to prove my innocence to you," I said, falling back on indignation. "The fact that you're going through phone records and calling my office shows exactly how paranoid you've become." "Paranoid." He nodded slowly. "That's your explanation for everything, isn't it? I'm paranoid. I'm insecure. I'm overreacting." "Because you are." "Am I? Or am I finally paying attention?" Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. Simon glanced at his watch with what looked like satisfaction. "That'll be for you," he said. Confused and increasingly panicked, I went to the door. A man in a suit stood on our porch, holding a thick envelope. "Evanthe Merrow." "Yes?" "You've been served." He handed me the envelope and walked away, leaving me staring at the return address, Thornton and Associates Family Law. With shaking hands, I opened the envelope and pulled out the papers inside. The first page made my knees buckle. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Below that, in stark black type, Simon Merrow versus Evanthe Merrow. I stumbled back into the kitchen, the papers clutched in my trembling hands. Simon was calmly packing his laptop into its case. "You're divorcing me." My voice came out as a whisper. "I'm protecting myself and my daughter from further damage." "Simon, please, we can work this out. I'll do counseling, whatever you want." "It's too late for that." "It's not too late. I love you. I made some mistakes, but—" "You didn't make mistakes, Evanthe. You made choices, and now I'm making mine." He picked up his laptop case and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" "To pick up Lila from school. Then we're going to my parents' house." "You can't take her from me." He paused at the doorway. "Read the papers. Emergency custody order. You'll get supervised visitation pending the final hearing." "Supervised? Simon, you can't be serious." But he was already gone, leaving me alone with the legal documents that spelled out the destruction of my life in cold, clinical language. The law office of Thornton and Associates occupied the 15th floor of a downtown high-rise, its glass conference room offering a panoramic view of the city that seemed to mock my current circumstances. I sat across from Simon, our respective lawyers between us like referees in a boxing match I was clearly losing. "Mrs. Merrow," Simon's attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Thornton, slid a thick folder across the polished table. We'd like to discuss the evidence my client has compiled regarding your extramarital affair. There is no affair, I said for what felt like the 100th time in the past week. This is all based on Simon's misinterpretation of innocent interactions. My own lawyer, a harried-looking man named David Chen, whom I'd hired in desperation, cleared his throat. My client maintains that no physical adultery has occurred. Physical adultery, Patricia repeated, her tone suggesting she found the distinction amusing. How interesting. Let's examine what has occurred, shall we? She opened the folder with theatrical precision. The first item was a photograph. The group shot from Simon's birthday dinner, blown up and enhanced. Kellen's hand was clearly visible on my thigh, his fingers disappearing under the hem of my dress. This was taken at the Riverside Bistro on March 15th, Patricia said. Multiple witnesses present, including the couple's 7-year-old daughter. He was just being friendly, I protested, but my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. Friendly, Patricia made a note. Let's see what other friendly interactions we can document. The next item made my stomach lurch. Printed text messages between Kellen and me, somehow recovered despite my careful deletions. March 16th, 11:47 p.m., Patricia read aloud. From Kellen Drake to Mrs. Merrow. Last night was fun. We should talk. Mrs. Merrow's response. Simon's being weird since Friday. Nothing serious, but wanted to give you a heads up. David leaned forward. Private communications between friends aren't evidence of adultery. No, but they establish a pattern of deception. Patricia flipped to the next page. March 20th, 2:15 p.m. Can't wait to see you this afternoon. Need someone who understands. And the response, always here for you. Simon doesn't deserve how amazing you are. Each message felt like a nail in my coffin. Taken out of context, stripped of the emotional turmoil I'd been experiencing, they painted a picture of calculated betrayal. These messages were deleted from Mrs. Merrow's phone, Patricia continued. Fortunately, they remained on the cellular provider's servers. We also have location data showing Mrs. Merrow's phone at Mr. Drake's apartment complex on multiple occasions during work hours. I started, then stopped. I had been to Kellen's apartment, but only twice, and only to talk. We'd kissed, yes, but nothing more had happened. Nothing that would constitute adultery in the legal sense. Bank records showed charges at restaurants during Mrs. Merrow's work hours, Patricia pressed on. Always for 2 people, always on days when she claimed to be at the office. The evidence kept coming. Security camera footage from Kellen's building, showing me entering and leaving. Credit card receipts from hotels where we'd met for coffee. Even dashcam footage from Simon's car, showing Kellen dropping me off at home late one evening when I'd claimed to be working overtime. This is circumstantial, David argued weakly. Meeting with a friend isn't adultery. Perhaps not, Patricia agreed, but it is fraud. Mrs. Merrow has been systematically deceiving her husband about her whereabouts, her activities, and her relationship with Mr. Drake. She's been using marital funds to finance these deceptions, and she's been doing all of this while gaslighting my client into believing his legitimate concerns were paranoid delusions. Simon spoke for the first time since the meeting began. Show her the recordings. My blood turned to ice. What recordings? Patricia pressed play on a small digital device. My own voice filled the room, tinny but unmistakably clear. Simon's lost his mind. He's convinced I was flirting with Kellen last night, and now he's giving me the silent treatment like a child. It was my conversation with Lauren, recorded somehow without my knowledge. This conversation took place on March 16th, Patricia explained. Mrs. Merrow is speaking with her sister, describing her husband's reaction to the birthday dinner incident. My voice continued. Kellen was just being nice, showing me the kind of attention Simon used to show me. And instead of maybe taking a hint and stepping up his game, Simon decides to play victim. How did you... I started to ask, then stopped. It didn't matter how Simon had recorded me. What mattered was that my own words were destroying any pretense of innocence. The recording ended, and the silence that followed was unbearable. My own voice still echoed faintly in my head. Cold, manipulative, self-pitying. I'd always thought of myself as the victim in our marriage, but hearing myself like that made it impossible to believe the lie any longer. Patricia gathered her notes with mechanical precision. "Your Honor," she said, "the pattern is consistent. Mrs. Merrow deceived her husband, exploited marital resources, and then attempted to obscure her actions when confronted. Mr. Merrow's documentation, corroborated by Mr. Drake's affidavit, demonstrates both premeditation and a profound breach of trust." David tried to interject. "Your Honor, these recordings represent entrapment." Patricia cut him off without raising her voice. "One-party consent, Counselor. Perfectly admissible." I couldn't take my eyes off Kellen's statement. His signature at the bottom, his confession neatly typed above it. Inappropriate emotional and physical relationship. I'd convinced myself that what we had was different, that it wasn't an affair, just an escape. But on paper, stripped of the emotional fog, it was just betrayal, clinical and unambiguous. "He threw me under the bus," I murmured. Patricia didn't flinch. "He avoided litigation. Cooperation was his only sensible option." Then Simon spoke, calm and final. "I'm requesting primary custody of Lila, supervised visitation for Avanthi pending therapy, and control of all financial assets." "Simon, please," I choked out. "We can still fix this." He looked at me with the weary clarity of someone who'd already mourned. "You had every chance. You lied to my face and made me question my sanity. You didn't just betray me, Avanthi. You made me doubt myself." "I didn't sleep with him." "No," he said, "you just gave him everything else." That line gutted me, because it was true. I'd given Kellen my laughter, my secrets, my time, all the things Simon had begged me to share. I'd spent our money trying to feel desirable while claiming we couldn't afford to fix the house or take Lila on a trip. Patricia closed her folder. "The hearing's set for next Friday. I'd advise your client to settle. The evidence is comprehensive." As the others stood, Simon lingered a moment. His voice softened, but the distance between us was absolute. "I loved you," he said. "All I wanted was honesty. That's all it ever took." Then he left. Not with anger, not even with triumph, but with the quiet resolve of a man who'd finally stopped hoping. The door closed behind him, and I sat there in the fluorescent light, staring at the pieces of my life laid out on the table. Receipts, transcripts, photos, recordings. Proof of how thoroughly I'd dismantled my own happiness. David said something about strategy, about next steps, but I barely heard him. All I could think was that Simon had been right. I hadn't made mistakes. I'd made choices. And now I was going to have to live with every single one of them. The courthouse conference room felt like a dissecting table, cold, bright, and sterile. Every word, every document, every photograph laid my failures bare under those fluorescent lights. Judge Harrison didn't look cruel, only tired of people like me, people who believed their loneliness excused the damage they caused. Simon's lawyer spoke first, her tone crisp, practiced. Mrs. Merrow engaged in deliberate deception and financial misconduct to sustain an extramarital relationship. Each phrase landed like a verdict before the judge even spoke. When my turn came, I tried to sound composed. "I made mistakes, Your Honor. I never meant for things to go this far." "Far enough to lie for months?" the judge asked evenly. "I was afraid," I said. "I thought I could fix it myself." "By involving your husband's friend?" There was no answer to that, only silence and the steady hum of the lights. When Simon finally spoke, his voice was calm, heartbreak wrapped in restraint. "I'm not seeking revenge, Your Honor. I just want to protect our daughter. My wife doesn't understand what her choices have done to her family." He was right. I hadn't understood, not when I'd lied, not when I'd gaslighted, not even when I'd told myself it was harmless. But Lila had understood. She'd seen the tension, heard the arguments, absorbed every cold silence between us. When the ruling came, it was clinical. Primary custody to Simon. Supervised visits for me. Exclusive control of the home and finances to him. Therapy, counseling, co-parenting classes. A year of proving I could be trusted again. I didn't argue. What was left to say? Afterward, Simon helped his parents gather papers, his movements methodical. When he finally looked at me, there was no anger, only sorrow. "You are sorry," he said. "I just wish it had mattered sooner." He left with Lila, her small hand clutching his, her face turned toward him. Watching them walk away was like watching the life I'd buried, one deliberate lie at a time. Outside, my phone buzzed. How did it go? From Lorraine. I deleted the message. I'd had enough of people who helped me justify what couldn't be justified. For the first time, I didn't reach for a comforting lie. I faced the truth in all its ruin. I'd broken something good. I'd wounded the man who loved me. I'd shaken my daughter's sense of safety. The judge's gavel had only formalized what I'd done months ago. I stepped into the afternoon light, not free, not absolved, just finally honest. And though honesty couldn't save my marriage, it was the only thing that might still save me. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.